All right, guys, welcome to the first book club meeting of the Twofold Way. Appreciate y'all being here. Thank you, Amelia, for being here. I figured we'd record this. I want to show you guys the idea behind this book club is part of the Twofold Way. Twofold Way itself is a term that I got from studying Miyamoto Musashi, which is why our first book is going to be The Book of Five Rings, which is Miyamoto Musashi's book. If you're not familiar with Miyamoto Musashi, he's a samurai. He won 60 duels to the death, and that's what he was really famous for. And the funny thing is there were tons of other more accomplished samurai at that time, but for some reason Miyamoto Musashi stuck out the most, mainly because he was kind of a rebel, and he was like one of these wandering samurai, traveling samurai, and he got really famous for his 60 duels to the death. And after that, there's conflicting views, but a lot of what he did was like he bounced between Zen, so he had a Zen meditation practice, and then also training. He would like train in the woods. That was another thing about him, is he was when he would have matches with other samurai, most of them were training literally in these in dojos. It was like nice clean floors, and they didn't have to step over anything. And so that was a really interesting thing about a lot of his wars. Some people think he won because he was used to like uneven ground and he can navigate much more fluently, right? So the Twofold Way is basically a deep understanding of yin and yang, right? So yin and yang, if you're not familiar, a quick overview would be like duality, right? So everything, an up defines down. Like you can't get rid of ups, you can't get rid of downs, you can't get rid of fronts and backs, lefts and rights, hot, cold, dark and light. So he also has a saying that'll come up soon, is from one thing know 10,000 things. And this could be, I think, is one of those deep understandings of life that you can apply to many different things. And one of my favorite things that I teach is breath work. And I apply this in my breath work practices. And hopefully at the time you're watching this, you can check out some of my videos. I have some. If you're interested in this and you're interested in this Twofold Way, it's basically foundational practices to live a more productive, let's say productive, but also more clarity, and also help you in all different ways. And you'll see a lot of what comes out of this book to understand a lot of what he's saying. It's, like constant movement forward. In fact, that's one of the things that I see, or I feel like, is repeated in this book, The Book of Five Rings, the most in here. It's this constant forward movement, and he repeats it in different ways. And we'll probably go over that in a little bit. But the idea here is it's not like a run, it's not a walk, it's a constant pace forward. Now, I apply this, I've practiced jujitsu, and that's something I apply to my jujitsu practice. I'm not going to be super explosive and blowing past people and exhaust myself. And this applies to life, of course. And you can't go too slow or somebody's going to overpower you. So you find a nice, a quality pace, and you can apply that to your life as well. So if you're interested in the Twofold Way, check it out. We have a book club if you're not a part of that. And the meeting that we have monthly, this is a free meeting that people can apply to. And then I also have a more paid version where we really go deep into business strategy and whatnot. We go deeper into the breath practices, deeper into, in fact, the paid version, you're going to have access to breath classes where we'll practice what I call like the Twofold Way breath. And then a lot of other bonuses, right? So we're just trying to provide value, but a lot is provided for free, right? So if you don't see it here, there should be a link below. There's a free access to my set of practices that we apply that's going to keep you, it's really practices for mind and body, right? To clear the mind, to be more clear, have more focus, but also working out is a part of it as well. And if you want to hear more about it, you can just send us a message and we'll help explain it. But most of it is explained in the document, and I can show that to you. There's probably going to be a link below. So the book that we're going over, well, there's multiple translations, and it's actually mind blowing how different each translation can be. The one that I recently dug into, well, I dug into this years ago, and that's when I got really passionate about it. The story is that most of my life I was bouncing between photographer, artist, right? So in high school, I won like all the art awards, drawing, painting, sculpting, all that stuff. But I was also the starting running back on the football team. And most of my life, I really was torn between the two. It felt like none of my friends were friends with each other because I had artist friends that didn't want to hang out with jock friends, and I had jock friends that didn't want to hang out with my artist friends. And so I was like always bouncing between the two, and actually, you know, a good bit of my life, I felt pretty lonely and pretty just walking my own path, kind of like Musashi, right? So I first picked up this book when I was training jujitsu in New York, and the school I was going to, one of the jujitsu schools I was training at. I was training at Marcelo Garcia's, but also Master Skaya. Love those guys. Alex, what's up, buddy? Alex is the one who gave me the name, the White Musashi. At the time, I had hair, and I had my hair had like a man bun. I was rolling jujitsu, and I was on the mat telling these stories about Miyamoto Musashi. And I'm gonna go ahead and tell you a few off the top of my head. The thing about Miyamoto Musashi is very famous for his first match when he was, some say 12, 13 years old. 13 years old, a samurai comes through his town, puts up a sign, because that's the way, that was like the tweets back then, right? So you put up a sign on a tree, and they say, hey, who wants to battle me? I think I forgot his name, Akira, something like that, Amira. Anyway, maybe we'll run into it in a little bit. So this guy challenged anybody in the town, and Miyamoto Musashi did what's like equivalent to graffiti to this sign, and just kind of threw ink all over it and was like, I'll fight you anytime, dude, or whatever. And actually his uncle at the time was like, goes to this samurai and says, hey, look, it's just a kid. He's just messing around. He doesn't really want to do this. Like, he's just a kid, so leave him alone. And the samurai didn't want his reputation. He didn't want to get this bad reputation. So he told the uncle, he's like, okay, well, what needs to happen so people don't think I'm cowering is he needs to show up and say it, pronounce it, explain to the crowd, and let them know that he was just messing around, right? So he shows up, he's ready to fight. Musashi is there as well. The uncle starts to announce it to the crowd, and as he's announcing it, Musashi just bursts in and says, no, I do want to fight him. And he barges in, the samurai swings at him, Musashi ducks, and he just body checks him to the ground, and then beats him to death with a wooden sword. So from the beginning, he's famous for like using a wooden sword versus bladed swords, and you'll see this happens like a good bit through the battles and through his time. So he makes a name for himself from killing the samurai at 12, 13 years old. And a little backstory on that is he was a samurai. He was the son of a samurai, Miyamoto Musashi. And being the son of a samurai, obviously he picks up stuff when he was really young, but there's also stories of him at 8 years old basically talking shit to his dad, and I can't think of the exact words he would be saying, but basically ridiculing his dad over and over. And his dad at one time is known to have thrown a sword or a knife, which at the time was considered a secret technique. Shuriken, I think that's how you say it, shuriken. And it's the technique or the secret art of throwing the sword. And he threw the sword at Musashi, and Musashi moved his head out of the way, just like in a movie or something, stuck in the post in his house, right near his head. And Musashi had the realization that if I didn't move, that would have hit me. And he left. He never, I don't know if he ever saw his father again. He left, and then like his uncle and some other characters trained him, but he claims to have never had a master, you know. But what I think is pretty interesting is if you know much about psychology, and there's a thing about learning, like I think it's Marcus Aurelius says, if you give me the man, no, give me the kid in his first 7 years and I'll show you the man. So if you can imagine samurai, I mean, this kid was probably training as a samurai the first 7 years of his life. And so he has things ingrained in him that is beyond anybody else, hence the 60 duels to the death. So after that, after the next fights I remember was the Yoshioka clan. And this is a pretty famous battle. There were brothers, right? So there was three different brothers. And this is one I think is really cool because he gets known for like strategy in this situation. So basically, he goes to this. It was actually one of the most prestigious samurai schools, and the Yoshioka brothers really got most of their money from textile, right? So they were known for a specific type of like navy, like a indigo navy clothing, which was super interesting. So he challenges the first one. The first guy, his name, I should have a list up here, but the first Yoshioka brother basically he was really known for his concentration efforts, like almost like he had this unwavering focus. That's all they kind of really say. They basically explain that he was just this really focused quality samurai, right? So Musashi, they determine a space, a time and place, and he shows up. The samurai shows up, but Musashi shows up late, and this is something he becomes known for, right? So he does this at times, right? And the funny thing about that is, at the time, it was just one of the most ridiculous things that you could do at that time. You, as a samurai, showing up late is the ultimate insult, right? And so what that did was, if you can imagine, when you're an hour late and you're considering battling to the death, what is going to be going through your mind in that instance, right? So the Yoshioka brother is just wearing himself out from thinking so much about almost, this battle to the death that he's about to go through. And Musashi, of course, shows up, and I think, he has some words, and Musashi just doesn't say anything, and he just stands there, and I'm pretty sure this is the battle where they basically they're all really quick, so they get to each other, and Musashi basically chops his arm, and in the novel they describe it as if he broke the top part of his arm, and his arm was hanging like a foot longer than usual, which is super interesting. So yeah, so beats this brother. And the other one, I think he claims that Musashi cheated or something, right? So, and he is known for his aggression and strength, and this guy just loses it, and he's like, "I want to fight you." I might have been the same location, same time, a few days or a few weeks later, shows up. Guess what? Musashi's late again. And of course, that aggravates this guy, of course. And then him being super aggravated when when Musashi finally shows up, and they start to fight, Musashi gets him like right between the eyes with the wooden sword. By the way, there's a lot of different interpretations of these fights and a lot of different stories out there. I'm just kind of telling you my favorite, the ones that stuck out to me, and also the ones that seem a little more true, because the cool thing about this book, this is Miyamoto Musashi, his life and writings. This book has so much information, so much cool text, and a lot of the text weren't around for a while. So actually, when this book came out, there were some new accounts that came up, like new interpretations and new perspectives of other people writing about Musashi, and some of it was conflicting. So nobody really knows the truest story. Like, do you believe what Musashi says, or do you believe what these people say? Right. So so he kills the second brother. And after this happens, the Yoshioka clan is so upset that they're getting beat by this dude. He had no name at the time. Musashi was not well known. He lived in the woods. He did not show up clean. At that time, they looked clean, they were pristine, their clothes were looking beautiful, hair was nice, all that stuff. But Musashi would really like roll up there like he was rolling out off the street, and just dirty, probably had bugs flying around him, you name it. So the third brother is a 14-year-old kid, and they claim, like, this 14-year-old kid's like, we want to fight you again. And word quickly spread that they were going to jump him, that the whole clan was going to fight him. And Musashi knew this. So the day of, they all come straggling up. I think some of the numbers are people guessed around 50. So it's like 30 to 50 people are just kind of, Musashi is always late. So they all just kind of come strolling up. But guess what? Musashi was early this time, hiding in the woods, observing everything that was going on. In the novel, there's a gunman in the tree, and the 14-year-old kid, the third brother, is literally has his back up against a tree, and all the other guys are kind of spread out, ready for Musashi. Well, when the time came, Musashi bum rushed him. In the novel, he throws a rock at the guy in the tree. I think he knocks the guy out, whatever. He just distracts him so he doesn't get shot. I think the guy shoots and misses. Musashi runs, and he cuts the kid's head off clean to the tree, right? And then all the other guys are fighting him as he's running away. And this is when he becomes famous for what's called the two sword technique. A really interesting thing about this is, like, at this time, this is one of the first times that people were wearing less armor. This is the 1600s. So right when gunpowder was being introduced to war, people weren't as used to this. So at this time, people started wearing less armor because there were guns, and the armor didn't really mean as much because the guns would shoot right through the armor. So what that means is the swords were changing. The blades were lighter, the swords were lighter in general. So you were able to pull out two swords and use those two swords versus opponents. Super cool. So, and it's pretty well known. I thought it was really interesting. So if you see different depictions of this, there's like a significance to, you see Musashi, and if you ever notice when you see these pictures, you'll see that he has his long sword and it's full of blood, right? So he's been fighting all these guys, and that thing's all bloody from killing a few people or chopping off a few limbs, whatever it might be. And it's later in the fight he pulls the second blade, and I believe that's in the novel. It's kind of described the contrast between the two swords. You got one that's full of blood and one that's just pristine and beautiful. And then from there, he's using two blades to battle 30 to 50 people, and eventually gets away. It's not that he kills every single one of them. He just gets away. Super cool, right? So Musashi over the years has a rival named Kojiro, and Ganru Kojiro. Ganru was the opposite of Musashi. He was super clean. He was known to be, he came from a wealthy family, all that stuff. So he comes from a wealthy family, but he also has a sword that's known as the drying pole. This thing, it was just a longer sword. I believe it was close to 6 inches longer than the average sword. And so he was known for the drying pole. Super, super interesting. But so they're kind of both training around the same time. But one other super cool match before we get to that one is he meets a guy named Biken. All right. So this guy has they know of each other and they've heard of each other, and eventually Musashi goes to fight him. And earlier I was talking about the art of throwing the sword, and it's called the shuriken. So the shuriken is like a secret technique. And what I think is really cool is, like, when it comes to martial arts and jujitsu, is like nowadays you can't really have any secrets. Like, all matches are videoed, so everybody knows what other people are doing, or they find out at some point. And being have done jujitsu for close for 15 years now, is you see different techniques come and go. I thought that was super interesting to see that. It's like people get used to certain techniques, and then they know how to shut it down, and then eventually, after it's shut down for a while, people forget about it, and then it comes back around, and they're using these techniques. So I think that's super fun and cool about jujitsu. So Musashi had this secret technique down, and actually people would pay him to use it. In fact, he would go be able to, on his travels, he would train people in exchange for places to stay. Like, he would just show up at schools, beat their master, and they'd be like, okay, why don't you teach us what you know? And you can hang out here, and we'll do lessons, once a week, 3 times a week, whatever you want to do. Which I think's pretty interesting. And then one of the main reasons that I relate to Miyamoto Musashi is because he was also an artist. He was known for calligraphy. In fact, in this book, they actually have a ton of his paintings in here. But at one point in the novel, he actually carves a sculpture in exchange for a new sword at one point, and in exchange for staying with the swordsmith, um, which I thought was super cool. So Biken, this guy Biken, this was one of those cool stories. It was like he was fighting. At times when you had duels, you could use almost any weapon you wanted, but most people did choose the samurai sword, it seems. And Musashi even talks about it in the Book of Five Rings. He talks about using different weapons and what they're good for, and he basically says, like, the sword's probably his go-to. Um, so this guy Viking used a chain and sickle. So it's got like a metal ball on the end and a chain, right? And you may have seen this in the movies. They swing it around, and then the other end it has like a wooden, a sickle, right? So chain and sickle, right? And they would wrap it around somebody, pull them to them, and then chop them, right? Or get them however. So
Is a sickle like a hook?
yes, yeah, like a hook, like a stick, and then a blade. Um, so it was really cool that you see this, and I just loved how it was told in the book. He basically, it's like there's all this build up, and you're like, oh, and they're in this amazing wooded area, and he comes across. Biken was known to be like a really big dude, and he's just standing there like swinging it, and they're ready to fight, and I believe Biken either moves back or forward. I can't remember, but Musashi basically just throws his freaking short sword, sticks him in the chest, and it's over. Like, I just thought that was super cool. All right, last one. As he's going on, and in the book, it's the novel. I'm going to read it again very soon, but it is beautifully written. It's one of my favorite things to read, and I definitely want to reread it again. But it has like lessons in it as you go. Um, we'll talk more about that some other time. So, sticking with Kojiro, so his last battle that he was really most famous for is versus this guy Ganru Kojiro, and this is one of those parts that was really um, awesome, and of course they get to the point to where they're having this the bout, and these things were, sometimes they would have ushers, sometimes they would have a crowd, so there would be a crowd there, and so they're meeting on this island, and which they actually named it after Ganru. I think it's called Ganru Island now. So Musashi's taking a boat up there, but before he gets to the boat, people are running around looking for him. They're like, Musashi's late. Musashi's late, like usual. They're always expecting, they always know you're going to be late. or him, and they find him in his room painting. Like he was just painting before this death match. And I just thought that was super cool. So they take him, he goes, and as he's on the boat, legend has it that he's on the boat, and everybody knew that Ganru's sword was longer than usual. So Musashi sees this boat oar, and he's like, he even says, that looks like it's about the right size. And he carves the boat oar down into a sword. And what I thought was super interesting is when you study swordsmanship and things like that, in fact, look how big of a nerd I am. You study swordsmanship, what they do is they will stand with the butt facing you as you're approaching, or it might even be down in this way to where you can't tell how long it is, right? So Musashi had it down and back like so, something like that. And I feel like such a nerd using this thing, but this is what he would use a lot. It's got a bucking. So he finally goes to the island and gets off, and Ganru runs up, and Ganru pulls his sword out and throws the scabbard off to the side. And Miyamoto Musashi, being like he knows how to agitate people, and he goes, "You fool!" He's like, "You've already lost." And he's like, "What do you mean? How do you know I already lost?" And he goes, "Because why would you throw your scabbard away if you knew you weren't going to need it again?" And just to rile him up. He also obviously riled him up about being late. And so they go at it. And honestly, I read recently another version where there was more movements, but supposedly it was all just one act, right? So he goes and he is attacking, and Musashi just gets him right on top of the head. And also, so Ganru's sword passes right over Musashi's face and cuts his headband off. And the headband flies off to the side. And the description of it in the novel is beautiful. It's amazing, where he's almost like it flies off to the side, and Ganru in the moment thinks that it's Musashi's head, and it's over. So all right, we'll get right into the book. So I'm just going to go ahead and read a little bit of it and give you a little bit of my interpretation. So super cool is recently, obviously I call this the Twofold Way. I did not know, I swear to God, I did not know this before, but I've always seen the name of his school. So, and even the very beginning of the book, the very beginning of the Scroll of Earth says the School of Two Heavens United. Two heavens. And in a lot of different interpretations, heavens can be known as way. Heavens can be known as the world in general, all of the world, right? So two heavens. And it's actually known to mean, actually ChatGPT, I Googled it, I searched it, I put it in ChatGPT, and I said, what does this mean? And it said it means the twofold way. And I was like, what? How cool is that? So yeah. So most of the books you're going to get on the Book of Five Rooms are going to tell you a lot about the stories that I just told you. And so he basically, this is super cool. Another thing I just found out. All right. So I don't know if you've ever listened to or heard of the idea of like 4 a.m. being this time when you're super connected, and you're super, you name it. Like there's different people that I follow that specifically meditate at 4 a.m. or they specifically write at 4 a.m. Supposedly a very spiritual time, right? And this says he began writing on the 10th month. So the 10th month to me is is my birthday, the October. And then at night, at the hour of the tiger. Amelia, will you search the hour of the tiger and find out what time that is? Make sure I'm not lying. So he's at night at the hour of the tiger, with the aim of expressing the true idea of my school, letting my mind reflect in the mirror of the way of heaven and the way of canon. Strategy is the practice that is necessary in warrior families. Those who know the way of strategy, well are rare. Did you find
3
it?
to 5 a.m.
3 to 5 a.m. I knew it. Yeah, isn't that crazy? So it's that spiritual time. Actually, as you get in this book, in fact, in the beginning, it kind of goes over it. If you ever hear these crazy stories and like you read this and you see the stories after, like he's most of the stories you find, especially the novel, it ends at 30 years old. He was 28 or 29 when he had his last battle. And after that, he never harmed another human being ever again, supposedly. Most of his matches after that, he would train people, but he was always using a wooden sword. And so, yeah. So he was writing at 4 a.m. So warriors must familiarize themselves with what is known as the two ways, literature and the martial arts. That's what this class is about. This is what this group is about. It's about training mind and body. So having daily foundational practices that are going to help you show up with a higher vibe, show up with a more clear head. Basically, that's my main purpose for anyone that's in this group, is to learn to show up in a more higher vibe state, right? So that's the best way to improve your life. It's in the present moment, being a high vibe person, making sure you're making the best decisions and whatnot, right? So yeah, this is another interpretation. If you look at the quote that I usually use, it's very close to this, but it's not quite. Warriors must familiarize themselves with what is known as the two ways, literature and the martial arts. That is their way. Even if you are clumsy, you must preserve in strategy because of your position. All right, so I'm just going to go throughout. Maybe I'll remind you exactly where we are when we get to it. But what I want you guys to do when you're reading this is recognize that the modern warrior of today, I believe, is entrepreneurs. But I'm also really into coaches, because I really believe coaches have done a lot for me in my life. And I'd like to do a lot for others, and I like to say, learn to heal yourself and teach others to do the same. And that's what I'm doing. That's one of my passions, especially with routines and work. So it's a combination of things. I don't believe that one thing's going to change everything for you. It might, if you have all the others down and then you add the right one. Who knows? Everybody's different. Here we go. In the way of strategy that warriors practice, the aim of action must be to surpass others in all domains. Right. So once again, warrior is an entrepreneur or a businessman, and you can read this whole book. In fact, it's known to help people in strategy and business strategy, in life strategy. And then also, whenever you read and you're reading in this, and you come across words or where they're talking about swords and weapons, our swords and weapons are writing, but it's also our computer, a camera, maybe, right? It is sufficient to train in it for it. It is sufficient to train in it for it to be useful at all times, and to teach it for it to be useful in all things. This is how the true way of strategy must be. Adept of strategy. A person who practices this way has been known as an adept of strategy. For a warrior, it is not possible not to study it. Nowadays, there are certain people to be found everywhere who declare themselves accomplished practitioners of strategy, but in general, they practice only the sword. Strategy, inadequately learned, is the cause of serious wounds. The master is like the needle, and the discipline is like the thread. The disciple is like the thread. So this is when he goes over like a carpenter. the way of strategy and carpentry is pretty cool, but that's not where I got most of my highlights. So I'm gonna move on past that. This is titled I Write on Strategy in 5 Scrolls. So I'll tell you the section I'm in just in case you're reading along, and because I know the pages are going to be different depending on the version you're reading, right? So the second is Scroll of Water. This is an overview of the scrolls. It's water, fire is the last one, ground, and wood, right? So you should learn what is essential regarding the state of the mind from the nature of water. Water follows the form of a square or a round vessel, basically like Bruce Lee says, right? Water becomes the cup. Water shapes to whatever shape is around it. It is a drop, but it can also be an ocean. The color of its depths is pure green, and taking its purity is my inspiration. I present my school in the scroll of water. The mind is the same, whether it is a matter of deafening one person or 1,000 or 10,000. Defeating, sorry, I'm misspeaking. The mind is the same, whether it is a matter of defeating one person or 1,000 or 10,000 enemies. So he's just referring to like strategy and even anything that we talk about, like the pace that I was talking about, not going too fast, not going too slow. It works for a group or a single person. The principle of strategy is to know 10,000 things from a single thing. That's just super powerful. Like if you just master one thing, you take the details that you're learning from mastering one thing, apply to many things, right? And what are those things? Most likely it's discipline, it's focus, it's time that you spend on it. It's doing that thing repeatedly every day, whatever your thing is. And that brings me to the book or the idea of resistance, like facing resistance. That is the war of art. Stephen Pressfield, but he's a writer, right? And so he talks about facing resistance every day. It's like, if I want to be a writer, I got to set a time. I think he would write 2 to 4 hours every day. And no matter how he felt, he's facing a blank page. He's just like, I'm going to start writing, right? No matter what, even if it was crap. And same applies to being a photographer. You want to be a photographer, you want to be good at photography, you need to be able to operate your camera without even thinking about it. It's like you're not sitting there thinking about shutter speeds and apertures whenever you got somebody in front of you that's waiting to take a photo. You got to seize the moment, right? The third scroll is that of fire. In this scroll, I write about war. For fire symbolizes a blazing mind. It is difficult to change strategy quickly when you are many, whereas a single person quickly changes his tactics in accordance with his state of mind. That is why for such a case, it is difficult to foresee minute details. Without knowing others, one cannot really know oneself. In the practice of all ways and in all manners of workings with things, the danger exists of deviating from the true way. Even if you practice the way daily and think you are on the right track, it is possible to deviate from the true way if your mind has turned away from it. You can recognize this if you know how to observe on the basis of the true way. If you're not progressing along the true way, a slight twist in the mind can become a major twist. This must be pondered well. I love it. He always says something along those lines like, this must be investigated thoroughly, things like that. So after realizing the principle of the way, it becomes possible to move away from it. If you find yourself naturally free in the way of strategy, and you will naturally reach a high level of ability, you will naturally find the cadence that is appropriate to the moment, and the stroke will appear all by itself and take home by itself. All of that is in the way of emptiness. He talks a good bit about cadence, and I think that's really cool. Pacing, and you have to pace yourself. You can't just blow wear yourself out by putting too much out too quickly. It is deplorable to die with weapons left in their scabbards without having been capable of using them. That's crazy. That's cool. I mean, that applies to life, right? So like if your business falls and your camera was on the shelf the whole time, that's just like, what's the word, Amelia? What would the word be? That is deplorable. That is
I was gonna say ironic. I don't know if that's what you mean.
ironic. No, I just meant more like ridiculous. Something like that. I can't think of the word. I know there's a word for it. Whatever the weapon, the important thing is to get used to it. Just like I was talking about photography, right? Getting used to it, like knowing what shutter speed you need to be shooting at for what effect you're looking for, what aperture you want, what do you want, what's your shallow depth of field? Do you want depth of field? In this way, you must succeed in drawing a strong bow, and by exercising every day, you will achieve the ability to wield the sword easily by acquiring the strength that is fitting for your way. It is necessary to know 10,000 things by knowing one well. Same thing he said once again. The sword at its origin of strategy. The sword is at the origin of strategy. By mastering the virtue of the sword, one person can defeat 10. If he can defeat 10, 100 can defeat 1,000. And if 1,000 will defeat 10,000. It is in this sense that in my school, the principles are the same for 1 or 10,000. And what I mean by strategy includes the practice of all warriors. Nonetheless, anyone who understands the way in great depth will find the simple principles in all things. It is important for each person to persevere in his own way. So eventually we're all developing our own way. Weapons should be adapted to your personal qualities and be ones you can handle. It is useless to imitate others. For a general, as for a soldier, it is negative to have marked preferences. So it's negative to have preference. It's negative to have preferences. Yeah, he actually has another saying, should have no preferences in anything. Basically, just saying you're gonna, no matter what tool you're using, you're gonna be good at it. You should examine this point well. Here we go. Cadence is inherent in all things, especially as for a strategy is concerned. It is not possible to master cadence without thorough training. Cadence is also for that which does not have a visible form. Regarding the situation of the warrior in the service of the Lord, accepting to the cadences he follows, he will rise or fall in the hierarchy, for there are cadences that are concordant and others that are discordant. In the way of business, there are cadences for making a fortune and cadences for losing it, stock market. In each way, there exists different cadences. You must discern well the cadences in conformity with which things prosper and those in conformity with those things with which things decline. In strategy, different cadences exist. First, it is necessary to know the concordant cadences and then to learn the discordant ones. Among the large or the small or the slow or the fast cadences, it is indispensable for strategy to discern striking cadences, interval cadences, and opposing cadences. Your strategy cannot be sure if you do not succeed in mastering the opposing cadence, right? So you got to know the cadence of your business partners, or you got to know the cadence of your client that you're working with. So if you don't understand their cadence, it's just not going to work out. You're not going to fit. You're not going to fit in together. At the time of strategic combat, you must know the cadence of each enemy and utilize cadences that they will not think of. So, right. So change up your cadence for a warrior. You will win by unleashing the cadences of emptiness that are born from those wisdom. from those of wisdom. In each scroll, I write about cadence. Examine these writings and train well. If you practice diligently from morning till night, the way of strategy I teach, your mind will spontaneously broaden. For those who would like to learn my strategy, should apply the following rules in order to practice the way. Here we go. So this is like 9 rules. Think of that which is not evil. Have positive thoughts. What? Like, think of that which is not evil. How cool and easy is that, right? Is it, are we reading Think and Grow Rich? What are we reading here? Number 2, train in the way. What's the way, man? What are you talking about? Anyway, train in the way. Number 3, take interest in all the arts. That's one thing I've always been a big fan of. You know, a lot of people, everybody talks about being specialized when it comes to making money. Most entrepreneurs out there, Alex Hormozy, every coach, my sister just got a new coach, and she's like, they're telling me to do one offer, one product, one avatar. And that's the quickest way to $1 million. But in promoting that, that's business. That's one thing. But in life in general, you need to know as much of everything. The more you're able to take advantage and be more of a generalist in life. Know the way of all professions. Yeah, take an interest in all the arts. Number 4, know the way of all professions. Number 5, know how to appreciate the disadvantage. Know how to appreciate the advantages and disadvantages of each thing. Number 6, learn to judge the quality of each thing. Learn to judge the quality of each thing. Number 7, perceive and understand that which is not visible from the outside. I love this, right? So he's talking about just seeing things differently, like perspective. That's what it is. Perceive and understand that which is not visible from the outside. Number 8, be attentive even to minimal things. Number 9, do not perform useless acts. If everybody could just do that, that would be great. Do not perform useless acts. You must train in the way of strategy, keeping these general principles in mind, particularly in this way. If you do not know how to see right things in broad perspective, you will not be able to become an accomplished practitioner of strategy. If you master this method, you will not lose, even alone against 20 or 30 opponents. First of all, because you maintain your vital energy consistently in strategy. Dude, that's exactly what I was just saying, right? So our method, the Twofold Way, is about maintaining your vital energy, showing up. Like, that's the idea behind the Twofold Way. It's like we have these daily practices, so you show up with at an elevated state, because we don't wake up with just feeling good. Like, I mean, maybe some people do occasionally, but for the most part, like people who are depressed, they're just like, I don't feel good. What am I going to do? I don't know what to do. The answer is accomplish something. And this is known in a lot of different psychology, even in the book Psycho-Cybernetics. He talks about when people are really down, and he says to the only way out of it is to find and remember times where you were accomplished. He's like, I don't care if it's when you are first learning to tie your shoe. What was that feeling like when you learned to actually tie the bow and your parents were happy, or whatever it might be? So you have to take these small accomplishments and build on those. And that's what the Twofold Way is about. Waking up, early wake up, reading reflection, working out. That's the one I'm all about. I think that's the main one that most of us all need to do. Once again, if you haven't gotten it, there will probably be a link somewhere around here on this page or below this video to see the Twofold Way, the modern Twofold Way. You will not lose, even alone against 20 or 30 opponents. First of all, because you maintain your vital energy constantly in your strategy, and you practice the direct way. You will win through your techniques and also through your way of seeing. All right. You will practice the direct way. You will win through your techniques, right? So whatever your art is, you're practicing it daily. You have the techniques down. You don't have to think about it. And also through your way of seeing. Your way of seeing, it relates to part of our twofold way is journaling and clearing the mind. So free writing. And you're going to have a much clearer vision of your life if you take some time to dump out all the crap and find the true vision that you want for your life. And you practice the direct way. You will win through your techniques and through your way of seeing, since you have free mastery of your body. As a result of your training, you will win through your body. Since your mind is accustomed to this way, you will also win through your mind. Once you reach this stage, how can you be defeated? Regarding grand strategy, you must be victorious through the quality of the people you employ. I love this. Hire good people. Only hire good people. Your business and what you do is representative of the people you're hiring. Victorious. Okay. Regarding grand strategy, you must be victorious through the quality of the people you employ, victorious through the way in which you utilize a great number of people, victorious by behaving correctly yourself in accordance with the way, victorious by ruling your country, victorious in order to feed the people, victorious by applying the law of the world in the best way. Thus, it is necessary to know how to lose to anyone. Right? So you gotta know how to lose. If you do jujitsu, you have to know how to lose. You don't lose, you learn, you get over it. There were times where I was getting my butt kicked so much, especially in the beginning when you're a white belt, that I was holding back tears on the mat, like to where I thought I was gonna cry. That's how bad jujitsu can crush your ego, especially when you just get tapped. No matter how hard you try and you just keep going and you just keep getting tapped. And it crushes you. It crushes your ego. All right. So next time we'll start with the scroll of water. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to cut it off right now. Hopefully we'll see you guys next time. Please come with any questions. If you're reading along, bring some of your favorite stories. That, once again, that is one of our favorite things. The reason I want to do this with other people, I want to read these books together, and we're going to read one of the next books. I'm pretty sure we're going to make it Influence. If you're not familiar, well, I was going to choose one of these, 12 Rules for Life or Influence. So this would be more, this is like the cool thing about this is psychology, but it's also useful in marketing and business. I actually have not read this one. I've read 12 Rules for Life, but that was like back in like 2017. I've dabbled in it, and it is, especially like the first chapter, I reread that recently, and it was just amazing. I loved it. So if you're watching this, I'm open to suggestions on which one you might want to read next. We have a lot of other ones we're going to get into. There's a list on the Facebook page. Please, any feedback you got, let me know what you want to read and we'll read it. We're going to read some awesome sales books. We're going to read the book on negotiating by a FBI agent who used to negotiate with terrorists. So you're going to learn negotiation techniques from somebody like that. I mean, how cool is that? We're going to read some biographies. Behind me, I got Van Gogh. I don't know if we're going to read the Van Gogh one yet. We're probably going to read Elon's or Leonardo da Vinci's. Like I said, there's a whole list there. I'm gonna geek out all night on this if I don't just shut up now. So make sure to like, follow, subscribe if this is on YouTube, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for being here. Thank you, Amelia, for being here. And we look forward to seeing you in the next one.
Thank you, Eric.
You're so welcome. Monday nights, 7:30 p.m., 7:30 to 8:30. See you then.